Hello, system coaches. Welcome to Systemizing Your Defense. I am your host, Coach Barber. And today for episode 34, we're going to change up the format a little bit. I will not be at the board. We're just going to talk about systemizing. I'm going to go over systemizing, what it is, how to do it, and why you do it. At the end of this show, I will go over the one word, the one key word of why systemizing is better than scheming. So let's go ahead and get into the show.
Hey, the important questions are these. How can coaches like us, who want to spend more time with our family, not miss our kids growing up, who aren't worried about our own egos, and bust our asses coaching, but don't want to stay up at the coach's office all day and night working on tasks that just don't matter? How do we continue with our passion of coaching football and still have a normal life with our kids while being a hell of a leader for our players and coaches? Those are the questions, and this is the podcast that will give you the answer. My name is Coach Barber, and welcome to Systemizing Your Defense.
Hello, system coaches. Welcome back to Systemizing Your Defense. I am your host, Coach Barber. And today we've got a great show for you. It's one that has, once I learned how to do it at a very young age, it has made an absolute difference in my career. It was a major influence in my career, and that is systemizing. We're going to talk about what systemizing is. We're going to talk about how to systemize it, and then we're going to talk about why you're systemizing it. So I'm excited as I can possibly be about the show. But before we get into the show, I've got a topic that I really want to talk about. I myself have been gloating on this, and I'm going to apologize to a group of listeners. I hope I don't offend anyone out there, but let's talk about Aggie football. There's nothing I like more than hearing and talking about Aggie football. As you know, Jimbo Fisher was let go over the weekend, Sunday morning. It's a hell of a damn deal to win a game 50-something to 17 or whatever it was. Be excited, celebrating, and then get the phone call on Sunday morning that you don't have to come to work. But anyway, I'm not feeling sorry for him. He got paid off $76 million. I think the breakdown came out either last night or early this morning, where he is going to get paid in the next 30 to 60 days, I believe $25 million. And then another 30 to 60 days after that, another $15 million. And then I believe for the next 6 to 7 years, he's going to receive $7.5 million. So not a bad pension. So I'm not feeling sorry for Jimbo. He's just another A&M coach going through the same thing. It's time for A&M to start over, and that's what they do every few years. I guess growing up in Conroe, Texas, I grew up, the town was predominantly Aggies. There were a few Longhorns, not very many Texas Tech Red Raiders, and that includes myself. I leaned towards the University of Texas when I was younger, but that changed over time, obviously. The thing about the Aggie Nation is they do talk a lot, and it can drive you absolutely nuts if you let it. I know in 1984, we were playing Plano East up at Texas Stadium in the third round of the playoffs. That was my junior year in high school, and Texas had been kicking A&M around for years. That night, we won in the third round of the playoffs, headed to the fourth round of the playoffs, and all you heard was how A&M, from the Aggie people, was how A&M beat Texas. I mean, hell, I wasn't worried about the A&M Texas game. I was worried about the Conroe Tigers and the Plano East. I think they were the Panthers. I think they still are the Panthers. But that was what my concern was, but that's all the Aggies could talk, because they finally beat Texas. So there was I'm not going to say a dislike for A&M, but there was, I got tired of them at a young age. As I got older, I started to dislike the fan base a little bit more. I want to apologize if there's any Aggies. Don't leave me. You might even agree with me when I go through this. So please don't leave the episode and don't leave the show. Uh, but I've got a younger brother that played baseball at Texas A&M. I give him hell all the time, and he has drank the Kool-Aid, and he is just like the rest of them. My mother is a diehard Aggie fan, and our conversation Monday morning was not. Um, let's just say she got a little sensitive about the situation, and she started coming up with excuses and every damn thing else and justifications. But anyway, let's look at Aggie football. A few years ago, they were voted the number one worst fan base in America, and I agreed with it. Being in Houston, Texas, living right outside of Houston, I would agree with that. I would say LSU's is a close second. Um, there are a ton of LSU people in Houston, but I would have to take A&M just a little bit ahead of LSU. And I know there are fan bases across the country. Auburn, I hear, is absolutely nuts, and I will agree with what I've seen from a distance. Tennessee has been accused of being the same way. But let's look at this study that they had on how they came up with A&M being the number one worst fan base in America. There were five criterias that that they used, and A&M fits all five of them, if not perfectly, damn near perfectly. And number one, and it all comes back to number one, in my opinion, these schools have a major inferior problem, a major inferior complex, and A&M does with the University of Texas. They have forever, and I don't know why they do. It's a great school with great facilities, great campus, great town. College Station, if you've never been, is a great town. But for some reason, they have an inferiority complex with the University of Texas. It's so bad that they have the University of Texas in their fight song, and they haven't played them in years. I don't think they've played them since 2011 in football. And down here, that's the one sport that counts. So they do have a major inferiority complex. Number two, unrealistic expectations. A&M has had unrealistic expectations forever, and we're going to get into that with the patterns of their coaches here in just a minute. I know that A&M will overachieve sometimes and win 10, 11 games, and then the next year come back down to reality, and here we go again. They're ready to start over just like they are this year. They expect to be in the national championship hunt every year. That's unrealistic, absolutely unrealistic. I think it's unrealistic for Alabama to think that, even though they're in it most of the years. However, only one team can win a national championship. And if you look at the history of national champions in America over the last 50 years in football, it's the same schools. It's Alabama, USC, Ohio State's won a few, Miami, Florida State, Florida. Clemson had a run, and it was impressive that they were able to make that run a few years ago, because there was a time they got into the Gator Bowl in the late 70s, I believe it was, to play Pittsburgh. And that was the first time they've been in a bowl in over 30 years. So it's not like they've got a long tradition. Notre Dame's up there. I know it's been a while since they've won one, but they do have a lot, especially if you go back 50 years. But A&M still feels like they should be in the conversation with those teams. So unrealistic expectations does fit Texas A&M when it comes to football. They can't handle success well. Absolutely not. when they have a good year or they beat a good team down here in Houston, you're going to hear about it, whether you want to or not. I don't know how many people I had to listen to talk about the Alabama game a few years ago. I could care less. To me, it was another college football game. It was a hell of a football game. Don't ruin it by being so damn obnoxious that that's all you want to talk about. It was a hell of a football game. So let's leave it at that. However, they don't handle success very well. And here's the one that gets me, and this is every Aggie I know, even my family members. They are oversensitive to any criticism. Absolutely oversensitive to any criticism. You can come to me and you can tell me, God, Tech's going to suck this year. Losing to Wyoming first game of the year. I'm going to say, well, that's why we're going to play the games. I'm not going to sit there and I'm not going to get sensitive about it. I know they blew a 9-point lead to Oregon with about 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. I had to hear that. That's fine. That's the truth. The truth is the truth. So there's no reason to get sensitive about it. But there are Aggies out there that if they hear this podcast, they'll be mad at me for the rest of their lives. They'll hold that grudge. I dated a girl in high school that was a diehard Aggie, and oh my God, I couldn't say anything negative about A&M. There was no way. It is what it is. But anyway, let's look at the history of the coaches at A&M. I think you'll find this fascinating because I did this research when me and my mother were having our little discussion on Monday, and of course she got oversensitive about the topic. But if you look at Aggie football coaches, and I'm going to start in my lifetime. The first A&M football coach I ever remember them having is Emory Bellard. He was the head coach. I don't remember Gene Stallings, but I do remember Emory Bellard. Emory Bellard took over a program that wasn't very good. I believe Gene Stallings had maybe a 30% winning record when Emory Bellard took over. He won. I know he had 1 year in either 74 or 75. They were Tri-Southwest Conference champs with Texas and Arkansas. A&M finished that year. I think all three of them finished 10-1. But Arkansas, I do know, went to the Cotton Bowl and beat the hell out of Georgia in the Cotton Bowl that year. But not too long after that, Emory Bellard got fired in the middle of the year. Emory Bellard had a 64% winning record. And keep in mind, he took over after a guy that had around a 30% winning record. So the program was not in good shape when he took it over, but he was still, in a short period of time, able to win 64% of his games, win a Southwest Conference championship, and get to several bowl games. But that wasn't good enough. We had to get rid of him. And then they brought in Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson had a 52.5% winning record. He did not have a lot of success. The success he had was in the beginning. By the time he left the program, it was, once again, not in good shape. So I can't defend that firing. And then came Jackie Sherrill. The Jackie Sherrill hiring, that took a lot of criticism from sportscasters here in Houston. I know that he was the first college football coach to have $1 million contract, and there were a lot of sportscasters here in Houston that could not believe that somebody would pay a football coach $1 million. But Jackie Sherrill got $1 million. And to get Jackie Sherrill away from Pittsburgh at that time would take a lot of money because he was winning big at Pittsburgh. They were going to New Year's Day bowl games. So it did take a lot of money to bring him. And he had almost a 65% winning record. And he had some years in the beginning where they did struggle. But once he got it going, they won some Southwest Conference championships. He won the Cotton Bowl, beat Bo Jackson in '85. First time they had been to the Cotton Bowl in a long time. So he did do a good job. However, Uh, he was removed for illegal recruiting, and people that I know that played and coached there did say it went on. I don't know the details, so I'm not going to get into it. Not to mention, I was in college when all that happens, and everybody in the Southwest Conference was doing it. It wasn't long after he was removed from the program that SMU went into the death penalty. And then after him is R.C. Slocum. Now, here's where it gets interesting. R.C. Slocum spent 13 or 14 years in College Station and had many 10 and 11 win seasons. Went to the Cotton Bowl. His bowl record was not very good. And I believe if you ask him, he'll probably say that. But he did win 72% of his games, and A&M was on national TV quite often. They did have a year where they were undefeated. I believe they were 10-0-1 or 11-0-1, one of the two, and they were on probation for recruiting violations. But he did have a 72% winning percentage, but he couldn't win the big one, and he couldn't get to the national or win a national championship. So R.C. Slocum had to leave. And then came in Coach Fran. Francione came from Alabama. Why he left Alabama for A&M, I don't know, except he said A&M was always his dream job. He was a real good coach. He built some good programs. He built New Mexico to where they were going to bowl games. Then he was the one that got TCU started. And then when he went to Alabama, Coach Patterson took that to a whole new level there in Fort Worth for a long time. But Fran had a 53% winning record. There were some issues there. I know the program when he left was not in good shape. There were a lot of people talking about the number of transfers out, and it just wasn't in good shape. So Coach Sherman came in. He took over a bad situation, a lot like Emory Ballard did. And I know in his first couple years, they did not do too well. But he was recruiting well. And then I believe it was 2010, they went to the Cotton Bowl. They beat Nebraska and OU, who were ranked really high. And they surprised some people. And they did a hell of a job. And they got to the Cotton Bowl. And so in typical A&M fashion, the next year A&M had them in the BCS championship, or thought they should be there anyway. And they didn't have as good a year. And he had a recruiting class coming in that year that was in the top 3 probably. It was a hell of a recruiting class, and they removed him right then after just a few years. Did not give him time to reset that train wreck that he took over, and here they go. They're starting over again, and I never agreed with that. I said I felt like they should have given him a couple more years, but in typical A&M fashion, we got to fire him. He's not getting us to the national championship, and he should. Then came Sumlin. Sumlin in his first year with Johnny Manziel, he won the won the Heisman Trophy. A&M had a hell of a year, beat Alabama in Alabama. I believe they went to the Cotton Bowl that year too, and beat Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl. And then the following year, they already had A&M in the national championship. And I remember a buddy of mine that had season tickets to A&M games, and my son and his son were really good friends, and he went to the Ole Miss game, and Ole Miss won in College Station, and he was ready to fire Sumlin right then. And I said, did it ever dawn on you that maybe he did a hell of a coaching job the year before when they overachieved and won double-digit games and beat Alabama at Alabama? Did that ever occur to you? And I said, but since he overachieved, a lot like Sherman did, since they overachieved, now you've got the expectations so unrealistic that there's no way he's going to ever meet them. him or anybody else. So Sumlin went a few more years, and they fired him with a 67.7, almost a 68% winning record. And then comes Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo Fisher came in, recruited well, a lot of good things going on at A&M. 2 years ago, he had a hell of a year. There were a lot of people, including non-Aggies, some media people that thought that they should have been the fourth team in the playoffs. I'm not into that conversation, so I left it at that. They beat North Carolina in the Orange Bowl and finished with their highest ratings they said since 1939, when they supposedly won this national championship, their only national championship. But anyway, so after that season, they give Jimbo a 10-year, $95 million contract and spotted him walking across water in College Station and let you know they're back. And I don't know what they're back from. And that's what they always say when they win. We're back. We're back. Well, what are you back from? I mean, if Alabama has a bad year and then the next thing you know, they win 11, 12 games, they're back. I mean, they're back. But I mean, this is A&M we're talking about. But anyway, Jimbo did not meet expectations last year. And obviously he didn't meet expectations this year, even though they got good recruiting classes coming in. And they fire him after into his sixth year with a 65% winning record. Now, I don't care one way or another if schools fire their coaches. That's between the schools. But here's where I say A&M's expectations are unrealistic. And I'm fixing to read some numbers here to you that I'll let you make that decision. And this is what I read to my mother and my brother that sparked a hell of a conversation. Paul Bear Bryant, who is, most people consider him probably the second greatest coach in college football, behind Nick Saban. What do those two have in common? Probably the best job in America. I don't know. You could probably argue Joe Paterno in there, and others as well. Bobby Bowden, some of those. But Paul Bear Bryant had a 63% winning record at Texas A&M. Not very good. Maybe he left on his own. Maybe he left on his own so he wouldn't get his ass fired. I don't know. I wasn't around back then. But here's the one that gets me more than anything. Texas A&M's all-time winning percentage is 60%, almost 60.5%. So you're firing coaches in Fisher and Sumlin and Slocum and Ballard that are winning above your all-time winning percentage. I never can figure out what A&M is thinking. But here they go again. They're going to start the process over. And the joke that I said to my mother that got her started was, who are they fixing to hire that they can fire in 5 years and pay them off a hell of a lot of damn money? But anyway, I know y'all don't think that's as comical as I do, but being a Red Raider, that's comical to me. We know we're a second tier team. So it is what it is. I know that I give our alumni sites hell, or the people on it, when they start talking about firing people. I know last year Tech Joey McGuire came in and they overachieved, and they ended the year by beating Ole Miss in the Texas Bowl and beat them soundly, beat them handily. And going into this year, many of the sites had Tech winning 10 or 11 games and playing in the Big 12 championship game. Now, I know they've blown some games this year, and people are hollering about firing, but my reaction was, whoa, hey, we're starting to sound like the Aggies here. Let's slow our roll a little bit. But anyway, that's just some stuff on A&M football that I wanted to have a little fun with. thought it could be interesting. Hopefully you got a laugh out of it. And Aggies, if there are Aggies out there listening, look, it's nothing personal. It's what it is. I think it's comical, and I think in 5 years I will still be doing systemizing your defense, and we'll have this conversation again. But let's go ahead and get into the show. And let's start talking about systemizing. All right, systemizing to me started at a young age. Playing at Conroe High School, I knew what we were doing every single game from the time I entered the seventh grade. I think seventh grade I had to learn the defense, had to learn how to read the option as a backup quarterback. But I knew what we were doing every single day that I went to school because it was a system. Back then, when I entered junior high, they were running the wishbone and what they called a pinch defense. It was a 6-1 is what it was. And they brought the outside backers hard and then played technique up front, and the mic went B to B. But once I got to the high school, they switched to a 50 defense, and we learned it as freshmen, and it was the same thing for 4 years. So by the time I was on the varsity, I knew everything there was to know about the defense, and so did my teammates. If we had a move in, which we didn't get very many move ins, they had to learn what we were doing. But that was it. When I graduated from college, my first coordinator's job was second year at Grand Saline, and we were running a 50. In fact, my father was the head football coach. He turned it over to me, and it was a little bit different. There were some things that he was doing different than what he was doing, than what he did at Conroe. But I learned the changes. They weren't that big of a deal, and we hit the floor running. And that was my first coordinator's job. Then I went to Crandall. Crandall, we were running a 50. There were some terminology differences. They slanted more at Crandall than what we did at Grand Saline. We weren't a big slant team. We would move our front if we had to, but for the most part, we were going to anchor down and play technique and played real good technique. Whereas Crandall, we slanted the front a little bit. They called it a slant 50 is what they called it. But it was at Crandall where I began to really think about this systemizing thing. And I became obsessed with organization. And the reason I did is we worked some long hours at Crandall. There was a lot of sitting around the field house with absolutely nothing to do. We'd come in and the kids would leave, somewhere around 6 o'clock in the evening. And as coaches, we wouldn't leave until 8, sometimes after 8 o'clock. And going into my last year, one of the coaches left and he had the desk that was hidden back in the corner. So I went into the corner and took that desk with a plan. And the plan was to keep me entertained with football because I don't sit real good. I'll be 56 Thanksgiving Day, and I still don't sit very good. I don't sit long. I plan on every Saturday sitting and watching college football all day long, which I do watch it all day long, but not sitting. I'm up cooking. I'm up cleaning. I'm up doing something because I don't sit very good. So you can imagine at 26, 27 years old, how I was. So that third year, I sat in that corner and I started to organize a system that managed time, a system in which everybody had responsibilities and we got our work done and then we went home. And at that time I was single. And I just lived a quarter mile from the school. So it wasn't like I had anything to go home to. I lived with another coach. I wasn't in a hurry to go home. But like I said, I don't sit very good, and it was driving me absolutely nuts. So that's where I originally started organizing a system so that when I became a defensive coordinator, this is what we're going to do. Here are your game day responsibilities. Here are your Saturday responsibilities. Here are your Sunday responsibilities. Here are your responsibilities through the week. This is the defense that I want to run, and this is how we're going to organize practice plans. And I started putting it in the folder. And I was doing it with a 50 defense, even though that was the time I was starting to study John Goodner at Texas Tech University and their defense, the 4-2-5. He was considered the godfather of the 4-2-5, and it was very interesting to me. So I was going back and forth between those defenses, but I was trying to organize something so that hopefully in the near future, I became a defensive coordinator, and then I could manage the time better so that we could get home. I was seeing my now ex-wife. She lived in North Dallas, almost to Plano, about a 45-minute drive. So I was seeing her at that time. We just weren't married, and I knew that I wanted a family. So I did want to, time management became a huge thing for me. Now, let's define what a system is. All right, what is systemizing? A system is a set of principles or procedures to which something is done, an organized plan or method. We'll come back to that word organized, and we'll tie all this in together. A scheme. The opposite of systemizing is scheming. Just coming up with a day-to-day plan, week-to-week defense, throwing spaghetti up against the wall, drawing stuff in the dirt, doing things in games that you don't practice, and expecting to execute. To me, it's a definition of insanity. But scheme. The activity or practice of making secret, underhanded plans. Key word here is underhanded. So we're going to go ahead and define that. Underhanded. Acting or done in a secret or dishonest way. I don't think schemers are dishonest. I've worked with one that was a little dishonest. And I won't tell that story, but he was dishonest in the way that he never let you know what we were doing. That way, he could put the blame on you as a coach, and it wasn't his fault. And he did use that practice quite a bit. I was just fortunate that once he left, the head coach knew that he was doing it, so it wasn't as big a deal as I thought it was. Next, let's look at coordinator. Being that this is a defensive podcast, defensive coordinator. A coordinator is a person whose job is to organize events or activities and to negotiate with others to ensure they work together effectively. Once again, the key word is organize. So what is systemizing? Systemizing is organizing by the defensive coordinator a system not only on the field, but off the field. It's organizing practice plan. It's organizing off-season plans. It's organizing personnel meetings. It's organizing your defense. It's organizing your adjustments come game time. It's organizing everything so that everybody is on the same page and everybody knows what's going on. All right, so let's go ahead and let's look at how to systemize. Well, there's that key word again. How you systemize is you organize, and you have to be absolutely obsessed with organization to get this done. I know in my early years as the defensive coordinator, and even before I became the defensive coordinator at Langham Creek, I knew, in fact, if I wouldn't have become the defensive coordinator in Langham Creek the year that I did, I was going to go find a defensive coordinator's job. We had had a lot of success at Langham Creek. I was getting to know a lot of people. There were a lot of head coaches in the area that still remembered me around as a player and knew my father. So it was time for me to go find that job. Therefore, I spent a lot of time and became obsessed with organizing. This plan that I had started in the field house at Crandall in that back corner, I was now obsessed with and taking it to a whole new level. The places I would go, I had a 1 year old at home. My daughter was 1 year old. So when I went home, I wanted to be home. I did not want to go home and work on football. So I would stop off at the little Mexican cantina down the street and have a margarita and just work on organization. And that's all I worked on. I didn't work on X's and O's at that time. I was working on systemizing. If I was working on X's and O's, I was working on, well, I'll get to that in a minute because it's number 3 on this slide. But next, everything you do has to be consistent. You have to eliminate the excepts and what ifs and all that, because every what if and except that you have in your system opens up the door for confusion. And that was the one thing that I was trying to get rid of. I was trying to get rid of it in our defense, and I was trying to get rid of it in our plan, in our practice plan, in our, like I said, in our preparation for game planning. I wanted to get rid of the what ifs and the excepts. So that way I was consistent. I also handed every single year at the beginning of the year, I handed every single coach on that defensive staff a playbook. And I got the playbook binded, and the back side was where they could take notes. We only put playbook on one side of the paper. That way they could use the back side for notes. And I told them every year before we got started, here's your defense, live it, learn it, love it, and let's go coach the hell out of it. But I want you to go through there and I want you to find any inconsistencies in there. And if you find any inconsistencies in that playbook, you come see me immediately. If we're in the 4th or 5th week of the season and you find inconsistencies in that playbook, you bring them to my attention because we want all that out. And that's where the assistants helped me on this journey of systemizing our defense. Next is the 4 pillars of defense. We built the 4 pillars of defense out of organization. And the 4 pillars of defense started with alignment. And the reason it started with alignment was because I felt like 90% of playing defense was lining up right. I was watching defenses line up with +2 on the right side and even on the left side, and then wonder why they couldn't stop anybody. Well, over on the side that you're even numbers, just go get a body on a body, let the athlete make the cut, and hope like hell you get him down before he scores a touchdown. So the 4 pillars, number 1, alignment became a big deal. The alignment rules were something that was studied. There weren't a whole lot of changes. Changes that we did have with the alignment rules once we got rolling were more evolution than they were changes. It was offenses. The evolution of the offense meant that we had to evolve as a defense with our alignment rules and our alignment adjustments. And then, of course, pillar number 2 was keys. We wanted to be consistent. We didn't want to say, look, we're going to read him except here. No, this is what the key was. We were going to read this key, period. End of conversation. Now, I'm going to tell you, we did change up linebackers' keys, but once the linebackers got into the defense and they learned how to read backs, it wasn't hard to tell the linebacker, okay, if they're in 2 backs, you key this back and then tell the secondary, hey, y'all have the other back. That became very, very simple because of the consistency of the defense. And then, of course, responsibilities, same thing. Responsibilities did not change. We kept the responsibilities consistent That way they knew what they were, and we could hold them accountable to those responsibilities. And then finally, the techniques. They stayed what they were. We may have changed a technique here or there, depending on a rule change, but for the most part, they were techniques that have been around forever. I did not invent them. I learned them, and we kept them simple. So that was how we systemize. But you have to be absolutely obsessed with organization. And I go to a guy that hired me at Kempner, Mike Farrell. I know when we first got together and started working that spring that I came in, we were talking about drawing X's and O's all over the house, and at my desk, my wife would throw stuff away. She'd always ask me, "Do you need this?" "No, I don't need it. I don't need it." And I told him, I said, "Yeah, she throws stuff away quite a bit that I draw, but it's not that big of a deal." And he said, "Yeah, as you get older and you get more settled in what you do defensively, you'll quit drawing X's and O's as much, and you'll get into administrative stuff, into organization." And I did. That's where I became obsessed with organizing. Let's find a better way to teach something. If there's something that players are struggling with, or if there's something on that field that is giving us trouble, that offenses are hurting us with, let's find a better way to teach it. Let's find an easier way to teach it. And that was the obsession that I had at that point. Next, let's look at let's look at why to systemize. Now, here's the biggest reasons to systemize versus scheming. One is time management. Systemizing your defense versus scheming, you should already have the answers to the test within your defense, or you don't have a defense, or you don't have a system, excuse me. A couple things that come to mind. I love when I hear coaches say that something comes up and they'll say, "Oh, we'll just have to game plan for that." Well, if you're game planning for it, then that means you don't have a system. That means you don't have a strong system, and you haven't obsessed enough with the organization to create that system. You should already have the answer to that question. Now, how you want to do it within your system is the answer that you need at that point. But you shouldn't have to be game planning and figuring out how to stop something. That should already be within your system. Another thing that always has gotten me, and I love this, I'll sit back and watch and laugh. If I walk into a coach's office nowadays, or the coach's offices that I've worked in over the years, and an offensive guy will get something on the board, and he'll go, "Hey, how would you defend this?" And somebody would look at it for 5 minutes and figure out a way. Well, it's too late. You only got 30 seconds in a game to figure this shit out, or 25, whatever the time clock is now. But you don't have enough time to sit there for 5 minutes. The answer there's a question on the test that you don't have an answer for, which means you don't have a system. And then, of course, the defensive guy, after a few minutes, puts how he would defend it. And then the offensive guy goes, "Well, if you do this is what we'll do. And then this is what we'll do." And it's like, well, shit, the last one with the mark wins. And that's why I sit back and laugh. If somebody to this day sends me a diagram and says, "How would you line up to that?" it would take me 30 seconds, or however long it takes to put 11 bodies on the field. And that's it. And I can do it out of strong or weak. It doesn't matter. But time management's important, because the better you manage your time, the more quality time you'll get to spend with your family during football season. And here's the key: never missing your kids' games or performance. That's huge with me. I'm not going to say that I never missed. Sometimes you have to, but you put in enough time that you shouldn't have to make up time scheming crap. Have a system. I know I left a job one year, a job that I really liked. My son was real little. He was young, and I hadn't seen any of his football games. I think they were 5-0. They were playing another team that was 5-0. And all week he said, Daddy, can you come to this game? Daddy, this is for first place. Daddy, can you come to this game? I said, I'm going to do everything I can in my power, son, to come to this game. I will have my work done. If I don't come to this game, it's not going to be my decision. And I had all my work done Saturday afternoon, walked in and said, Coach, and I'm not going to mention names because I do like this guy. I enjoyed working for him. I like him a lot. We still stay in touch. We still talk about, especially a lot of defensive back stuff. So I will not mention his name. But he looked at me and he said, we got work to do. I'd like to go see my son too, but we got work to do. And my first thought was, well, your son would probably appreciate it if you would go to this game. It would probably help you, or at least get you closer to Daddy of the Year. But I didn't go to that game. And I think I got to see 2 games that year, and both of them were, one of them was during the off week, and then the other one was his last game of the year. His team made the playoffs, and we had gotten knocked out of the playoffs the night before. And that's the only way I got to see him. So I knew right then that I would not be back. Another guy who I have, and I will say his name, James Brown. He was head coach at Kempner. And when he first got to Kempner, he asked for our kids' schedules during the fall. And it was his first year. And we were planning, we still only had one child. My daughter was either kindergarten or first grade. I can't remember, but it was that long ago. But we were preparing for a playoff game on Saturday morning. It was getting around lunch, and Coach Brown came into the defensive meeting room, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I said, "What do you mean? We're preparing for a playoff game. What do you mean?" And he said, "I know that doesn't your daughter have a competition in downtown today?" And she had a competition down at the George R. Brown Convention Center in downtown Houston. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, well, go. That little girl needs you to be at her competition. She needs to see you there. He said, we can take care of this later. Take your computer home and tell these guys what you need done, and y'all can reconvene later. Well, we were running a system, so I just told the guys, make sure you have this done and this. I'll be in touch later on this afternoon. Once you have all this done, head to the house. And I knew right then I could work for this guy forever. And I could. And then, damn it, he had to go up to Dallas. Ended up retiring this past year from Mansfield Timberview. But I could have worked for him forever. I was hoping like hell he'd come back down to Houston, find a job in Houston, hire me as his defensive coordinator, and let's go where we left off. But that's important. And if it's not important to you, it's important to those kids. And I learned that with my 2 kids. Another thing about time management is it keeps your coaches fresh and excited about their jobs. I've been on that staff when I was young that we didn't leave till 10 o'clock at night on Sundays, or at least after 8. And then you come in early on Monday morning and you're already exhausted. Hell, you ain't even gotten out on a practice field and you're tired. And what that does is that does build apathy in your coaches. They will get to a point where if you're staying up at the coach's office on Sunday night scheming and looking for the miracle ways to stop things, then your coaches will get to the point where they don't care win or lose. They'll be ready to get this, the expression, let's get this shit over with. So take care of your coaches and they'll take care of you. Another thing about systemizing is your coaches' and players' performances will be a whole lot better. They'll be better because they know what to do. They don't have to guess at what they're doing, and they don't second guess themselves when they're coaching and hope like hell that they're doing the right thing. And this is huge. And that's coaches and players. Players, not knowing what to do. You're asking them to take their first step. How in the hell can they take their first step when they don't know what the hell they're doing? But if you're in a system and you're reteaching it every single week with the objective to get better every single week, then they'll know what to do. Another problem with scheming there with your players is when your players don't know what to do, you leave the door open for them to do whatever the hell they want to do. A confused player will do whatever the hell he wants to do. And he will abandon his fundamental technique if he doesn't know what to do. Another thing with systemizing is if everybody knows what to do and it's a system, then you can hold everybody accountable as the leader of the defense. You can hire players and coaches accountable. Usually with professional coaches, you won't have to hold them accountable. You can hold them accountable professionally by saying, hey, what are we doing here? You don't have to get onto their ass and treat them like a kid. Same with the players. When you're watching film, you've taught them the rules. They know their rules. The rules are consistent. They haven't changed. And now you can hold them accountable. And when they freelance and do their own thing, BS, hold them accountable. Now, I told you that there's one word that sums up systemizing more than anything. And I'm huge on this. And that one word is relationships. When you systemize and everybody knows, one, time management, two, everybody knows what to do, then you can build relationships a whole lot stronger than if you're throwing spaghetti up against the wall. You're scrambling. You can build better relationships at home because you're spending quality time at home during football season. Your family knows that football is not the most important thing in your life. Whether it is or not, you want to keep harmony in the family, then they don't need to think it is. And then you have time for your kids. I know with my kids, I never took work home during the week. The only night that I worked at home was Sunday nights. And Sunday nights were usually, those were the nights, that was the only NFL game I'd watch. I'm still not big into the NFL. But Sunday night, especially if it was a matchup, I'd make a drink. My wife would make a drink, and we would watch the game, and I would get work done. And that was usually when I was wrapping up stuff for bulletin boards and practice scripts and stuff like that. Every day I came home. My daughter was 1 year old when I was hired as a defensive coordinator at Langham Creek. And every night I came home, I played with her. I will admit I crawled in that damn Barbie doll house and played Barbie with her. But I was there for her when I got home, and then when we put her to bed, me and my wife had shows that we watched. But I did not bring it home because I managed the time away from home with a system. I know my son was born. I was at Kempner. I think I was in my second or third year at Kempner. And I would get home, and he immediately wanted to play. Once he got to where he could run, how a little 2-year-old can run, he wanted to play tackle daddy. Tackle daddy. Tackle daddy meant he threw the football to me. I was on the ground. I would catch it, and he would run and hit me, and I would go down, and he would tackle daddy. And he'd do it all damn night if I'd let him. but we'd do that when I'd walk in the door, and then we'd eat dinner, and then it's time to take a bath, go to bed, and then continue on. I'd do something with my daughter, but I never took work home. Sunday night was the only night, all because I systemized my defense and I managed the time through the system. Coaches, when coaches know what they're doing, they know what they're doing every single day that they go to work. They look forward to going to work because there's no guesswork. They can plan. They can even plan what it is they're going to do. They can watch film and decide, hey, I got to get better at this. I got to get better at that. I always told my coaches, you're the head coach of your position. You will make the decision who starts. I may tell you to get somebody's ass off the field during a game, but I'll never tell you who to start. Now go learn the defense, and here's the practice plan. Here's the practice model. It may change. I'll let you know, and then you can go plan. And then players knowing what to do, not having to guess. When they know what to do and it becomes habit, and those first 3 steps that we talk about become habit, and the technique becomes habit, they play faster. They play more physical. They get there quicker. And they feel better about themselves. Once again, they can come to practice knowing what we're doing. They can go into a game not having to guess what's going on. So that is, relationships is the number one reason that I would systemize. Time management will build relationships. All right, well, that's it for this week. I hope that you're clear on what this systemizing is. We will continue to build this into the defense. Right now, we're still in the shade front. Talk about the next few weeks so you know what to expect. We're going to get into option. We're going to get into about 4 or 5 episodes of defending the options. We'll start with the triple option, the veer. We'll get into zone reads, different ways with zone reads, and then we'll get into RPOs. I know RPOs are a big deal. I might even talk a little bit about some other coverages when we do talk about options. And then from there, we'll get into how we turn everything into an option, no matter what it is. The power play action game, any run game that has a play action off of it, which every single run ought to have a play action off of it, and we do defend that play action off of it, rather the offense runs it or not. But anyway, we'll get into that as well, how we do that, and our defensive system is always option responsibilities. It'll help your players always be in position. Their talent level will make the plays, but it's your job as coaches to get them in position. But I'm looking forward to that option, those option segments. I'm looking forward to getting back up on the board with you. So good luck. Those of you that are in the playoffs, that are still in the playoffs, that are fortunate enough to be in the playoffs, whatever you do, enjoy the moment, because they're not guaranteed unless you're at Katy or North Shore. I never coached at Katy or North Shore. But anyway, enjoy the moment. Good luck, and go systemize your defense.